Steel and Flame, Book 1 of the Guilds of Avlaan series is available on Amazon. If you like fluffy wolf lolly protagonists and Japanese light novels, follow the link below to check it out.
Hello, Leonardo Cornejo here with another video. Today I want to talk about something. By the way, Daigo is on break because he's depressed by Gura's graduation. He's broken, he's mentally unstable, a lot more than usual, he can't function. He's basically beating a child. I don't really know the context because I am not watching over him all the time, but apparently that helps him feeling better. My condolences to Timmy's family because apparently this evil is spreading to their entire household, but Timmy asked for it. Anyway, Daigo is depressed because of Gura's graduation, so no Daigo video yet. He's coming back though. He's coming back. I don't know what he's up to, other than beating a child. I really don't understand he's an evil fox. I don't understand his plans. But since he's depressed and not available, I am giving you more of the serious videos, serious with quotations, basically, because I'm a very unserious man. And today I want to address something that extends from the video where I talked about why copyright cannot be abolished. Because I have noticed people insist on abolishing copyright and they don't really know what copyright is or how it works. And they seem to mistake copyright a lot for patents and trademarks. First of all, one of the problems is this notion of intellectual property laws as basically all the same. The concept of intellectual property perhaps is a terrible idea. Perhaps it is a terrible idea because it gives people a very distorted understanding of why creators do need to own their creation. The thing is, copyright is for the finished work. It's not for the ideas. That's the first part you need to understand. You can't copyright ideas. You can't claim ideas as your own. For example, you can have a red-haired fluffy wolf lolly, and I can't claim you are plagiarizing Ruwa because she's not Ruwa. She's your character. You can and I actually encourage people to, you can make kobolds the style I describe them and you're not plagiarizing me. In fact, I encourage it. In fact, I invite people to ask me for the details that maybe you don't know about the kobold lore to help you write them better, because I want to expand the idea. I want the idea to grow. I don't know the idea. I came up with the idea, but I actually want the world to know the idea, to spread it, to make it a meme. You can't own ideas. What you own is the expression of those ideas. That's the part you need to understand with copyright. What you own is the finished product. I don't own the ideas, but I own the result of using those ideas to create something. It's hard to understand because it is basically something not physical, but that it is tangible. In fact, that's how the Berne Convention works. The problem with copyright is that corporations have corrupted it. We do need a reform, but copyright is not this ownership of ideas. I will explain it further because actually there is a system of intellectual property where people have tried to claim ownership of ideas. But in fact, that's exactly what's happening with, for example, with the conflict between Pocket Pair and Nintendo. Pocket Pair is not making Pokemon. It's making Palworld. The designs of the characters, the names of the characters, nothing they are using is copyrighted or copyrightable. Even the art styles. You can't copyright art styles, you can't copyright ideas, you can't copyright concepts. What you can copyright is the finished product. For example, let's say You can't copyright monster catching. You can't copyright cute designs, the art style, everything that, for example, you find in Nexomon and Palworld. You can't copyright it. What is copyrighted is basically, let's say, for example, one of the good ones, Pokemon Ruby. It's copyrighted. The contents, the results of the ideas placed inside those cartridges, inside the ROMs actually, because the cartridges are just the form in which the ROM is stored. Placed in the ROMs, they are copyrightable. You can copyright the basically the result of the ideas, the end result. Copyright, in fact, and people say, but you could apply copyright infringement to fraud. No, the reason it is not fraud, the reason it is copyright infringement, is because one of the essential parts of copyright is allowing someone else to profit for the results of your effort through your authorization. That's where it is extremely complicated. It's extremely complicated. I am not a lawyer. I am no legal expert. I learned all this because I'm a creator. I write a book. The book is mine. The book is copyrighted. According to the Verne Convention, I don't even need to publish it to have it copyrighted. In fact, there is a manga about that. It's called Game Devil, I think it's called, where a character mentions that. I don't even need to have it published for it to be copyrighted. The moment I wrote it, it's copyrighted. Same with characters. You draw a character. Let's say, for example, you come up with this character. Let's call it George the Cat. An example which I have used it in my Spanish videos. And George the Cat is this dumb-faced black cat. Has a really dumb-looking face, and it's cute. George the Cat is your character, and people can make other black cats, even other black cats named George, but they can't be 100% identical to George the Cat because it's copyrighted. And let's say you write a story about him and about how he behaves, and let's say he likes to read comic books and play with wooden swords, and not even as a sword fight training, not like a kid playing with a sword, and that's his personality. He really likes swords, like a kid, and likes to read comic books, and has this paper hat shaped like a helmet. And George the Cat is a really silly character. It's really childish. It's actually designed to act like a child, even though he's an adult in cat years. Why? Because cats are often very childish from the human perspective. George is a very innocent character, a very naive and immature character, and that's his characterization. The whole combination of ideas and the result of that combination is what is copyrighted. You combine the ideas, they are still not copyrighted. You pour them in a place and you make them. That's when it's copyrighted. You could say ideas are like sand in the desert. You have sand everywhere. You can actually grab a bag of sand and nobody will complain because there is just so much sand and it's in your backyard and it's everywhere. And you grab the sand from your backyard and you start making glass from it. The ideas are the sand. The result is the glass. You don't own the sand, but you do own the glass piece. The finished product. That's what you copyright. That's why I sell. That's what I sell actually. But excuse me, sorry. But since you are not a professional at selling, you probably need a storefront. And that's why copyright can't be used the same as fraud. Copyright, what it does is extending your permission of copying your product to sell it. That's why it is something in the arts. That's why it is something in paintings and books and all that. That's why it can be. That's why fraud is not a way to fix the copyright problem. What you do, The plagiarism problem, actually. Plagiarism is the problem, not copyright itself. That's why fraud doesn't fix plagiarism. Because what you do with copyright is you have the right, you, the creator, not the government, the creator, and in fact the Berne Convention is independent from governments, that's part of it. You, the creator, have the right to say, I authorize you to copy my work so you can sell it and you pay me in return. We don't want a monopoly on ideas, as people say. What we want is basically something that doesn't stop us from retaliating if someone harms our business. Simple as. We don't want a monopoly on ideas. We don't want government interference. We actually want the government to not interfere when we decide to retaliate at someone who is harming our interests. Now, that's where it gets complicated, and when I said copyright doesn't give you ownership of ideas, it gives you ownership of the resulting product. Basically, no one can sell exactly the same word for word book I sell without crediting and paying me. That's basically what is copyright. You can't sell word for word the book I wrote without both crediting me and paying me. And I can extend the authorization, and even I can extend the authorization to say, no, you can sell it without crediting me or without paying me. It's basically giving you the reins over how your finished product advances. And also, to an extent, that's where things get a bit more complicated. For example, I can extend authorization to say, well, fan works, derivative works are allowed. In fact, that's where fair use was created, to make sure that the derivative works have some freedom to exist even without the direct authorization of the creator. I tend to be a lot nicer when it comes to fan projects, but as I always say, they are not official, they are not canon, and if you bother me enough, I will sue your ass. So basically, and I can decide sometimes if I were to like a derivative work a lot, I could say, yeah, this is officialized. Why? Because I like the guy. Basically, that's what we want copyright for. Basically, to have control over the finished product and to have influence over the derivative works. Not full control over the derivative works, but certainly influence, and to be able to fuck over anyone who makes us angry. Basically, the reason many of us creators, even in the anarcho-capitalist sphere, want copyright, not all of us, but many, want copyright to exist, is to make it function basically like a rocket launcher. It's the same reason some of us want to own a tank. I want to own a tank so that we can blow up the neighbor. Half jokingly, but you get the idea. It's so we can basically support or retaliate. Now, as I said, we don't own ideas. You can you can use the ideas and make your own. That's where patents and trademarks especially begin to become a problem. Patents are also not ownership of ideas. They generally are ownership of procedures, of designs. Originally they were meant to help inventors. I say meant, not that they did, because basically from the very beginning, thanks to people like Edison, who were basically patent trolls, who were basically people who stole an invention and then patented it before the one who came up with it first. Because of such people, patents have been easily abused from the very beginning. I don't think they should be eliminated, but I think patents should require a lot of arbitration. I think patents have become too easily to obtain for the powerful and too hard to obtain for the common folk. And that it is easy to patent something that someone else did but didn't patent. I think that shouldn't be allowed. I think if you were not the first to use it, you shouldn't be allowed to patent it, which is the problem with, for example, Nintendo, who do patent things that other people used but they didn't patent. I think that should be the precedent to say, no, this person did it first and didn't patent it, so you can't patent it because this is the person who did it first, historically recorded. That person can patent it if they want to, but you can't. Since they have chosen not to, you can't. I think that should be a reform we need for patents. In general, we need a heavy reform, if not complete abolition of patents. And then you have trademark, which is actually the one that bothers me the most. Why? Because trademark does try to and has accomplished the ownership of ideas, which is the real problem here. The real problem here has never been anything but the real ownership of ideas. The patenting isn't the problem, copyright isn't the problem, trademark is. Why? Trademarks basically apply to anything that is not patented, that can't be copyrighted or patented. Basically, you have levels. Copyright is automatic. According to the Berne Convention, the moment in all signing countries, the moment you create something, even if you don't publish it, it's copyrighted. Copyright is automatic. You don't even need to make a procedure. Why? Because you created it. Other than having proof of being the one who created it, you don't need anything else. You came up with it. You shaped it. You gave it form. You wrote it. You edited it. You painted it. But you don't own the ideas. Then there is patents, which do require a process of applying for the patent and arbitration to decide if you can actually get the patent approved. And you still don't own ideas. The thing is, you don't own ideas. You patent it, but the idea is not yours. What you patent is procedures and things like that. Even then, it's complicated. It's very complicated, and the problem is that it often benefits the powerful and not the average citizen. That's where the problem with patents start. And that's why I think ownership of patent and copyright shouldn't be allowed to be applied to corporations. That's also another thing. And the Patent Office shouldn't base their approval of patent on the popularity of the person, which was a problem with Edison and with Einstein. But then you have the real problem, the one that I think shouldn't exist, and which people often mistake for copyright, which is trademarks. Why? Because trademarks can be applied to anything, as long as the company or the person has enough influence and some idiot in some office decides to approve it. Let's not forget that Disney tried to both copyright and trademark Day of the Dead, the celebration, the Mexican celebration. In the end, it didn't pass because they were like, wait, no. And it was for the sake of monopolizing an idea, the Day of the Dead, for the sake of Coco. And James Cameron did trademark Avatar, which was a problem with the already existing TV show Avatar: The Last Airbender. That's a problem. I think that shouldn't happen. I think that shouldn't be allowed, because it is claiming ownership of an idea. It is claiming ownership of a word. In the case of Avatar, it's a word of religious and spiritual connotations, and you have this chucklefuck owning it, claiming ownership of it for a fucking propaganda movie, to be honest. For this novel savage propaganda movie. That's bad. That's actually bad. I am actually against that. But the problem is, here is the problem. When people don't know the difference between copyright, trademark and patent, it makes it easier for these companies to protect the laws that actually allow them to claim ownership of an idea. I do think you shouldn't be able to claim ownership of an idea You shouldn't be able to claim ownership of a religious word. But trademarks allow it. Trademarks are the real problem here, because trademarks are basically apply for anything that can't be patented or copyrighted. Basically apply for anything that you want, as long as it can't be copyrighted or patented, which means it can apply for ideas. Trademarks are designed to protect large companies from competition by allowing them to claim ownership of ideas, of names, of words. The more you allow it, the worse it gets. And of course, the average citizen can't go around and trademark things. It's really hard. In fact, there are people who have accomplished the absurd trademarks just to prove the point. For example, I think it's in Spain, a writer managed to trademark certain words, which are progressive left-wing terms, and this person basically did it to prove a point, including to sabotage progressive movements, which I entirely endorse. But first of all, it only applies to Spain. Because the trademark is exclusive to Spain. And second, it proves that it can be abused a lot. Trademark laws can be abused a lot. Copyright laws, not really. Why? Because, as I said, you can't copyright ideas. All these people who are claiming that copyright shouldn't exist. And it's surprising because many of them are libertarians. They know a little bit more about politics and laws than the left, but for some reason they don't know this. Copyright doesn't apply to ideas. Copyright doesn't apply to anything but the finished piece. Copyright doesn't apply to fanfics, in fact. In the sense that they are fair use. Fanfics are fair use. Fanfics are derivative works. That's why it doesn't apply. For example, you can write a fanfic of one of my works, and it is considered fair use and requires litigation to prove that it is plagiarism. It is plagiarism if you word for word copy the book and sell it as your own. In fact, if you take the book as it is, with my credits and everything, and you distribute it online, it's also not really copyright infringement, it's piracy, which is a more complex matter. It's not plagiarism, it's piracy, which I really couldn't care less. As long as you are not making profit, it's not plagiarism. If you copy it and start selling it in a marketplace for profit, especially without crediting me and without paying me, it is plagiarism, because you are copying it for commercial purposes. But modern piracy, the kind of piracy that we see nowadays, which is not for commercial purposes, is basically just copying and redistributing for free. It's a very different matter, because it's not plagiarism, because you are not making money from it, and I am neither am I. It's more complex. But the thing is, it's not really copyright infringement. It's piracy. It's a separate matter. But copyright infringement will be, as I said, if you copy it word for word and claim you wrote it, that's copyright infringement. If you take the book as it is and you sell it without paying me, that's copyright infringement and piracy. If you take the book as I wrote it and make copies of it and give them to your friends, it's piracy and not my business. All I can ask you is, if you really liked it, buy it. But the thing is, it's not, copyright is not claiming ownership of ideas. It's claiming ownership of the specific finished product. If you write a fanfic of my characters, it's fair use. There is a lot of debate on the existence of fair use, but it's fair use. It's basically, it's apocryphal material. In the most archaic sense, fanfics were called apocryphal. It's apocryphal material. It's not copyright infringement. It's apocryphal. It's not official. It's not canon. It's apocryphal. It's not. It's fair use. And it's a whole another package in terms of litigation. Now, that's for fun. That's because it's a derivative work. Derivative works are a very complex area of copyright. Now, yes, it is entirely possible to harm someone, and corporations do it a lot, to harm someone over derivative works. I have some guidelines, which I haven't fully explained, about how derivative works are pertaining my work, but basically, as long as you are not profiting from it, or rather paywalling it. If you receive donations, not my problem, but if you're, as long as you are not paywalling it, as long as you encourage people to buy my work, and as long as you do it with love, I don't have a problem with derivative works. And if I like them enough, I can say, you know, it's official. Go ahead and profit from it. I want to be flexible with the derivative works, as you can, because it's not a conflict with copyright. Now, if you start paywalling your derivative works of my work without my immediate authorization, yes, I will take legal action, which is something heavy and bothersome. If you start writing out of spite a fanfic only to fuck with me, I will take legal action, because I don't want to cause another Mortal Instruments. You know what I mean, you know what I mean. So yeah, I don't consider derivative works inherently copyright infringement. There are people who do. Particularly big names, particularly corporations, but they are not. And regarding piracy, I'm not going to waste my energy on pursuing someone who is not profiting from it. As long as you don't profit from piracy, it's not plagiarism. And as long as you're not profiting from piracy, all I can ask you is, please, if you really liked it, buy it. I don't mind if you are a pirate or not, just buy it. And don't brag about pirating in front of me, that's rude. That's rude, man. Have good manners. I understand pirates, because I used to be one when I was in a worse economic situation, that with less accessibility. Steam did more for ending piracy than any politician. My apologies, you know the problems with this camera. Steam did more for ending piracy than any politician, to be honest. Steam made games a lot more accessible, a lot cheaper. And politicians are the ones who encourage piracy with all these stupid laws. Piracy is a distribution problem. I do believe it. I do believe that if it is easier for you to get the product legally, people won't pirate it. If you make it cheap, if you make it efficient, people won't pirate it. So I understand pirates. I understand if you decide to pirate my book, but when you can afford it, if you liked it, buy it. If you read it and you liked it, but you couldn't afford it, or you weren't trusting enough to buy it when you started reading it, if you read it and you pirated and you liked it, buy it. That's my position. I have been very firm on that. Buy it, and that's it. You no longer have any debt with me. I don't have this anger against pirates that other creators have. I don't have this anger against derivative works that other creators, or rather corporations, have. I know how it is. I know the world isn't easy. I know the economy isn't great. Well, I do think I have a strong argument in favor of copyright with that, because all the arguments against copyright are not based on the benefit of the creator. Are based on the benefit of complete strangers who really don't matter to one as a creator. Are based on the argument that copyright prevents creativity. How? How is it going to prevent creativity if it allows derivative works? Patents might be an obstacle to creativity. Trademarks are an obstacle to creativity. But copyright isn't. There is no creativity, and I will put it this way, there is no creativity in taking the finished product of someone else's work and reselling it. If you copy word for word my book, where is the creativity? But if you write a fanfic, there is creativity. And it's derivative works. And derivative works are separate from copyright. There are lines made to separate them. Even in countries where fair use is not recognized, derivative works are treated with some level of amicability by mere will of the creators, because they know that's creativity. They know that abusing copyright by destroying the derivative works is unhealthy, except for corporations. Corporations are a big problem here. As for example, if you write a Bleach fanfic, you won't have Kubo Tite knocking at your door. Even Shueisha will not knock at your door, even though they own part of Bleach, because they published it. Nintendo is an exception because Nintendo are assholes, not because that's the norm. And in the case of piracy, as I said, it's a separate matter. It's a separate matter. Copyright doesn't need to be abolished. It does need reforms. It does need reforms that weaken the corporate power and the extension of copyright. To make it more author focused, to make it more friendly to derivative works. That doesn't need to be abolished. Because it is not claiming ideas. It is not claiming ownership of ideas. It's claiming ownership of a finished product. Which is not the idea. Trademark is the one you're probably mistaking for copyright. Trademark is the one people use to claim ownership of ideas. Trademark is the problem. Trademark is the one that is used and has been used to claim ownership of ideas, to claim ownership of words, to claim ownership of colors. Patents too in the case of colors, but exclusively in some cases like Panta Black, for example, which is a chemical. It's claiming ownership of artificially made chemicals. Trademarks are the problem, not copyright. People keep mistaking copyright, trademark and patent, and this comes from the fact that I have noticed that repeatedly when talking about the lawsuit between the Pocket Pair and the Pokemon company, primarily Nintendo. That's something I have noticed, that there is this constant mention of Nintendo is protecting their copyright. They are protecting their copyright. Pocket Pair didn't make an unofficial Pokemon game, which would be a derivative work, not even complete copyright infringement. Pocket Pair wasn't there is more copyright infringement in Vaporeon Rule 34 than in Palworld. There is more copyright infringement in fan art than in Palworld, and even then, well, we tend to be forgiving of fan art. As I said, art styles are also not copyrighted. Art styles can be, as far as I know, trademarked, not even patented. Trademarked, and it's rare. It's rare that it happens. That's what I mentioned. In fact, in the AI videos, that art styles are not copyrighted. That's why it is not theft. It's not copyright infringement. It's not plagiarism. Fan art is. Fan art is plagiarism, especially if paywalled. Fan art is in the middle ground between fair use and plagiarism. When it is not copyright, when it is not paywalled, when it is not profited from, it is fair use. Once you start profiting from it without licensing, it becomes plagiarism. And even then, many companies tolerate it as derivative works, because fighting against fan art is stupid and counterproductive. I have said it, I am not against fan art, I am just explaining what the law is. I do think it should be more flexible in that regard. I do think it should be considered, no, its derivative works, it's not done with malice, it's not done to harm your business, therefore it's derivative. But I also think it's unethical to paywall the creation of others. It's a very complicated matter. Basically, I would not engage in that, and I would ask people to not engage in that with my work, but I don't think it should be illegal. I think it's wrong, ethically speaking, but I don't think it should be illegal. I think it should no longer be plagiarism. But as I said, you don't own the ideas, and that's the matter with, for example, with Palworld. They say they are protecting their copyright. No, because it's not copyright. They are actually using patents because they couldn't apply copyright, and they couldn't apply trademark. Patents are harder to obtain, that's the matter. Patents are harder to obtain than copyright and trademark. That's why when it comes to intellectual property lawsuits, basically the first step is copyright. Why? Because copyright is applies automatically. You don't need to fill in for a copyright. It applies automatically in all countries that have signed the Berne Convention. Therefore it's easier to own. But that would require a copyright infringement, and since they are not selling a Pokemon game, copyright is not infringed. Since they don't have Pikachu in Palworld, there is no copyright infringement, not even as a derivative or parody, which is often where they could defend themselves. For example, if they release, let's say, for free on their website a Pokemon fan game, the reason Nintendo often throws cease and desist letters to fan projects is because they don't want to have the challenge of making a copyright claim, of making this, starting a plagiarism lawsuit and losing it. Cease and desist letters are a way in which they try to prevent derivative works, because if it is considered a parody or a derivative, they lose the case. Basically, let's say, for example, you make a Pokemon fan game, and all you are trying to do is revive the feeling. For example, I don't know, you make a Pokemon Sword and Shield, but using the style of the Gen 1 games. You make all the mechanics, everything, but graphically it's like the Gen 1 games. Nintendo sends you a cease and desist, and you say, you know what, fuck you, I'm going to continue doing it. And you go to the law, and let's say you have a good lawyer. Let's say for some reason you have a really good lawyer who happens to hate Nintendo enough to work pro bono for you. And you argue it's a derivative, it's fair use. Why? Because it's not even the game, it's not a direct copy of the game, it's a project that is fair use, and you win the lawsuit. Hypothetically, you could. That's why they sent. That's exactly what they want to avoid. That this situation, which is not likely but could happen, that someone gets a good lawyer who can prove fair use in a fan project, defeats them because they lose. They will lose the case, and they will need to go for another form of intellectual property violation. Or for example, let's say you put Pikachu in your game, and it's Pikachu. The name is not there, but it's there, and you throw tomatoes at Pikachu. It's parody. The lawyer is good enough to prove that it's parody. That's how Matt got away. The magazine Matt got away with many things under that argument. That's how Robot Chicken basically could grab the characters of other companies and make jokes with them. It's parody. Nintendo can't even try to use a cease and desist letter because they better shut up. They better shut up, because if they try to claim plagiarism of a parody, they get fucked. So they couldn't claim plagiarism to Palworld because absolutely nothing was plagiarized. They couldn't claim copyright infringement. Then you have the next step, which is trademarks. Ironically, even though they are more harmful than patents, they are easier to obtain than patents. Why? Because you just say, look, this thing, this idea, this word is mine, and no one else can use it. And for example, the logo, the Pokemon logo, the font is trademarked. But you look at Palworld and you see that nothing there is trademarked, and nothing can be trademarked. They wouldn't win the lawsuit on trademarks, so they went for patents. Why? Because patents are actually the strongest here. Even though they are the hardest to obtain, that's why they are in the lowest end of priority when trying to fuck over someone else. Patents are really hard to obtain because you need to fill in for a patent, prove that no one else patented it. It's a mess. It's harder to obtain. That's why it is the last choice when dealing with intellectual property laws. The fact that they went for patents against Palworld proves they are desperate, and that they are not protecting their copyright, because that's what people say, they are protecting their copyright. No, dude, it's a patent lawsuit. They are not protecting their copyright. Copyright and patents are not the same. Copyright and trademarks are not the same. And most people who are arguing against copyright are arguing actually against the all-encompassing concept of intellectual property. Because they generally, the arguments they use against copyright are arguments against trademarks. Not even patents. Some cases do mention them separately, but generally speaking, the arguments used against copyright are actually against trademarks. For example, the claim that copyright gives you ownership of ideas is not true. That's trademarks. Trademarks are the problem here. Most of the negatives attributed to copyright are trademarks. The only argument against copyright that is copyright in most of these cases of people, and I have seen multiple videos and I'm tired of all these cases of people arguing against intellectual property laws. The only arguments that are actually against copyright are actually, one is a problem of extending copyright for too long, which is true, because you have copyright that lasts beyond the death of the creator, that lasts centuries, that is owned by corporations who are immortal entities. That's a problem. That's the problem. That copyright is in the hands of immortals, of evil, heartless immortals that they aren't even persons. They are corporations. But that's not a problem with copyright itself, but with how we are applying it. It's not copyright, it's the application of copyright which is wrong. The problem is not the thing, it's how you are using it. It's not the size, it's not the length, it's how you use it. Funny thing is, it's not the length, it's how you use it. Well, the length too, but because it's too long. My sense of humor sucks, I know. The thing is, it's not because it's too short, it's because you are using it wrong and it's too long that it's bad and it hurts. Fucking hell, this video is not for everyone. This is a T-rated video. Too many dick jokes. Whatever. Back to what I was saying. And the other problem is the hostility to derivative works. But derivative works are already a separate matter. And piracy, which is a separate matter. That's the thing. The arguments given against copyright are already a debate within copyright, and are not copyright itself which is causing the problem. Derivative works in particular are something that is already separate from copyright almost entirely. But when it comes to trademarks and patents, yeah, the arguments given against trademarks and patents are stronger because, yeah, there are problems with them. Trademarks in particular. Most of the arguments, and that's a weird part of all these videos and all these people saying we should abolish copyright. 90% of the arguments for abolishing copyright are actually the arguments for abolishing trademarks. I don't know why people confuse trademark for copyright that hard, which is part of the bad world situation. Again, it's what inspired this video, that I see people still arguing for and against Nintendo, that it's about copyright when it's about patents, when it's about trademarks, when it's about anything but copyright. When it's actually about patents, because trademarks failed too. They tried to use copyright, failed. Or rather, they didn't even try because they noticed it did not apply. They tried to use trademarks, failed. Or rather, did not apply again. They went for patents because they could apply. The arguments against copyright are mostly, as I said, against trademarks and patents. And I think there is an argument against this all-encompassing intellectual property, this term intellectual property, which is all-encompassing of the three, because they are separate things. They are separate things, and I think trademarks should disappear entirely, and I think patents should be a little bit less beneficial to corporations, and I think copyright can be more flexible. Trademarks are the problem. Trademarks are really the problem here. Are the majority of the problem here. I hope that explains why my position is that no, we don't need to get rid of copyright laws. We need to get rid of trademark laws. We need to get rid of this notion of all intellectual property as copyright, of all intellectual property laws as copyright, and get rid of this notion of all intellectual property as the same, of all intellectual property laws rather, and that intellectual property is like this almighty justification for anything. I think if we reduce intellectual property to copyright and intellectual work, that is to say, not the patent itself, but the invention of the being the first. That's another matter with copyright that differentiates from patents and from trademark. Copyright is first served. Copyright is, you were the first to do this, it's yours. Patent is, you were the first to feel it, it's yours. Trademark is, you felt it, it's yours. You see what's the problem? Copyright is automatic. Copyright doesn't even require the state. It requires the law. That's a difference. It doesn't require the state. It requires the law. Trademark 100% requires authority, because copyright exists automatically, according to the law. Trademark doesn't. Trademark you need to feel for it, which is where the state interferes. Copyright is basically the law allows you to retaliate if your copyright is harmed. You don't need to feel anything. It's automatic. You don't need to have the state interfering. You can have copyright without having the state, but trademark, you can't have trademark without having the state, because you need a bureaucratic process for the trademark. It's complicated. I am also not a lawyer. I'm also not an economist. But I'm starting to suspect most of the people who are against copyright are actually against trademark, because all the bad things they point at copyright are trademark things. They are trademark things. They are patent things. They are not copyright things. And as I said, the Palworld case is what inspired this video, because I saw that in discussions about Palworld in general, both for and against. Both were basically saying copyright when it was not copyright. Well, that's it for today. Have a good one.